don't know about magic. I always called it The Shining.
I don't know if a film can get any more classic than The Shining, at least in my humble opinion. How daunting, obviously this is based on a book as well in its own right, but how daunting is it to continue that film's cinematic legacy all these years later?
I mean, quite daunting, I think. I think I would have been skeptical about it as an idea at all, had it not been for the fact that Stephen King had written a novel which follows on the story from The Shining. So I feel like if he wants to take some of his characters from The Shining and move them forward in a different direction. But my feeling was if Stephen King's got something to say, then let's see what it is. And I read the novel and I really, really liked it. And I felt like it was so different from The Shining. And I think that's sort of what's interesting about it. I think had we tried to remake The Shining in some way, or even made a sequel to that movie but still felt like The Shining, then we would have been in trouble.
The idea was to be able to create a villain that was free, sort of standing in its own entity in this film, which was wonderful. So I get to actually appreciate walking into these environments, which I knew from The Shining, but to create my own emotion to it because no one had expectations on it. So I could breathe, and I don't have to be a part of the comparison.
Oh, it was the most daunting experience of my professional life. I mean, by a mile. A big part of that is because I think, like you and like so many people, I idolize Kubrick. I love The Shining. I grew up with The Shining. It kind of changed what I thought a horror movie could be. So I preferred very much to look at this instead of as a sequel, because that was just something that would just keep me up all night. More like a descendant of The Shining. This film had to kind of acknowledge its parents, who I thought of as Kubrick and King, and their DNA would be all over it. But that, beyond that, it needed to stand up on its own 2 feet as well.
One of the most interesting early responses I've seen to this film was someone's opinion that you were in some way trying to reconcile King and Kubrick. Was that part of the intent in some small measure?
Absolutely. As I'm a constant reader, I've been a King fanatic since I was a kid. So he's been my hero for so much of my life. I've always felt this very strange kind of ache when I look at that gulf of difference between kind of the Kubrick Shining and the King Shining, and his feelings about it, which to this day are still, really clear. So yeah, if there was a chance to try to bring those two paths back together in a way that celebrated both of them, I just as a fan, and I'm a fan first, just as a fan, I thought it was an irresistible opportunity, I hope we did that, but I guess we'll find out.
Hello, Danny.